the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order here at 2:01 p.m. October 13th, 2021. We'll go ahead and call roll. Will the secretary call the roll? David or Joe?
All right, Mr. Hinckley.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Spiegelberg.
Mr. Spiegelberg won't be joining us today. He's up in Rock River and due to the snowstorm isn't going to be able to make it, so he won't be here today.
Ms. Hanning.
Here.
And Chairman Moore.
Here. Thank you, David. Excuse absent members. The chair will entertain a motion to excuse absent member John Spiegelberg of the Planning and Zoning Commission from this meeting.
Kennedy, so moved.
All right. Second from Mr. Hinckley. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take a vote here real quick. I'll do it. Mr. Hinckley?
Aye.
Ms. Hanning?
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Member Spiegelberg has been excused from today's meeting.
So just as a point of information, these Zoom meetings are much more accommodating for faraway members. Has John been invited to join by Zoom? And just
Yeah, I think the bigger problem is John's not technologically savvy.
I could relate to that.
And he does not have any intent to try to figure it out or get the equipment that is necessary for it. And that's why the last several meetings, since we've been on Zoom, that I've had him with me, because it's easier for him to just concentrate on the agenda and stuff we're working on. So
he just has.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's not, he's old school. He likes to read through his packet and get it in hand. So I guess we'll let this slip this time and we'll excuse him.
Oh yeah, that's a good excuse, and I understand. I'm no young thing myself.
Well, it's interesting too with John, because he lived in Laramie for so long, and he moved up to Rock River when he got married, and his most recent wife, she just recently passed away, and he enjoys living up there. So more power to him. Very good. Well, we'll move on here. Let's see, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda for the October 13th, 2021 meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The item 8, I was interested to see that and had something similar in my own mind. I don't know if we need to make it an official change, but I would strike from the Board of County Commissioners, and I'd like the commission to entertain a more general discussion of possible regulation changes, if that's acceptable.
As far as okay, on today's discuss regulation changes requested from the Board of County Commissioners. So your suggestion is to do what, Hinckley?
Put a period after changes and strike the rest of the sentence.
Okay, that'd be fine by me. Does anybody have?
I'd like to hear from David what the county commissioners have forwarded.
David?
Sure. So do we want to, maybe we just leave it like that and other changes or something, because the chairman actually directed us to discuss a few items. So that's why it was on there that way. But I think if we just include a general discussion as part of that, I don't think there's any problem with that. So.
And that would be fine. No, I just was hoping, and it's one of the things I had in mind, I know is near and dear to you, Mr. Chair, would be this issue of second homes. So I think I'd like to have a broader discussion of regulation changes than just the specific things that the Board of County Commissioners requested. That was the point of my agenda.
Yeah, I think that'd be just fine. I think if we're planning on having a current planning projects, if they want us to discuss that and any other topic, I think that's just fine. So we'll just have a general discussion. with those that are the things that were requested by the Board of County Commissioners and other planning items. Does that
That'd be
sound
great.
okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Because I think that there are, and you're right, Mr. Hinckley, there are things that I think that would be good to discuss today in light of things that have came up here in the last couple months. All right, so do I have a motion to, so looking at the approval of the agenda with item number 8 changes, do I have, is there any other changes or anything that anybody else sees? Not hearing any, then we'll just go with the change that Mr. Hinckley had suggested. And so do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
All right, we got a first, we have a second.
Hanning will second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hanning. We'll go ahead and take a vote on this. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley,
All right.
Ms. Hanning,
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. So the agenda has been changed and corrected for today's meeting and approved. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes for the September 8th, 2021 meeting?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So Mr. Spiegelberg did call and did have something he would like to add to the minutes.
Okay.
So there was this discussion about the DEQ. I think it was Mr. Hinckley's letter as well, which addressed sending some things back to DEQ. We went back and kind of listened to that section, and he wanted us to add something that says, and this is what we've written down. A discussion took place and Commissioner Spiegelberg felt that DEQ should not go outside of the normal protocol of just looking at the project property. So that was kind of what his idea was, and he had looked through the minutes and wanted that added. So if you guys were amenable, we would just pop that in there. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any objection to that?
That's consistent with my memory.
Okay. Then we will make consistent the minutes with the meeting as per John's request.
Just as a general question of Joe, I guess, or David, how do you do these minutes? Do you just do them kind of real time while we're talking, or do you go back and listen to those tapes? I'm just trying to get a feel for what kind of an effort it is, because I think the minutes are more complete than they had been in the past, and we got really good feedback from the county commissioners at their last meeting, commending you guys on providing them a complete discussion of our discussion. So what can you give me a little feedback on? Is this a big job, little job?
Yeah, so I write notes down during the meeting and then go back and listen and fill in the blanks.
So do you feel like this is a big chore? Because like I said, I think it's good stuff, but I don't want it to become your job.
I guess it depends on how long the meeting is.
Okay. All right, you're not unhappy?
No, we're good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. All right, so we'll go ahead, and unless I hear an objection from another member, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes for the September 8th, 2021 meeting with the additions that Spiegelberg had requested. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Kennedy, second.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. So we have a first and second. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Ms. Hanning,
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley,
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chairman Moore, myself, aye. So motion carries for the minutes, approval of the minutes of the September 8th, 2021 meeting. We'll move on to disclosures. The chair calls for any disclosures to be known from any of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board.
Kennedy, none.
Thank you.
Hinckley, none.
Thank you.
Hanning, none.
Thank you. and none myself. So no disclosures at today's meeting. Today, the discussion will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. The individuals who address the commission, please identify yourself and state your address so that we have that on tape and in the record for our public record. So we'll move on now to public applications. The first public application is going to be the Vista Beam Tower application, LUCT-02-21. Joe or David?
All right. The applicant is Inventive Wireless LLC, doing business as Vista Beam. This is located in the north half of the south half of Section 24, Township 14 North, Range 76 West, which is about 18 miles down the road, down Highway 230. The request is for a tower permit. There were 3 reviews. 2 had no concerns. YDOT said that any work within the right-of-way would need to be permitted through YDOT, and consider moving direct access to Wyoming 230 and accessing off of the proposed subdivision. Notice was provided by posted sign, publication, and certified mailings as required. The findings necessary for approval: the proposed tower shall not adversely affect the public interest. The applicant has provided the required site plans and/or survey, and the applicant has addressed all of the potential impacts. The applicant is proposing a 127-foot tower. The tower will meet the setbacks for property lines and lease lines. The findings necessary for approval as listed in the staff report are incorporated here in as findings of fact. The provisions of the Albany County Zoning Resolution, Chapter 5, Section 5, and Chapter 5, Section 9 have been met. Our staff analysis: the applicant has provided a complete application and has addressed all Albany County standards for tower permitting. The property is currently zoned agricultural. The applicant has submitted a statement allowing Albany County to install a communications antenna on the tower if needed. The applicant has noted that in the event of the facility is no longer being used or is abandoned, the owner will be responsible for removal of the facility. The applicant has provided a copy of the construction plan certified by an engineer licensed in Wyoming. The foundation design must be submitted and approved by the county engineer prior to construction. The applicant will need to follow all further Albany County construction requirements as they proceed. And our staff recommendation is to approve the Inventive Wireless LLC, doing business as Vista Beam Harmony Tower permit application, LUCT-02-21, based upon and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions from the commission for the staff? Ms. Hanning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Wilmes, for the presentation. And I also want to add on to what Member Hinckley mentioned about your minutes taking. There, each time they've gotten more detailed, and it seems like you hit the sweet spot, you know, that you don't have to probably get any more detailed, and I appreciate all the effort that you must put into writing them up like that. They're really well done. So okay, regarding this application, so one question I have is regarding the zoning, since this is sort of enveloped in some of the other things before us this afternoon. So this is zoned agricultural, but is it part of the subdivision and zoning change request to change it to small lot residential? Or would this one, I guess it's a 1 point something acre parcel, would remain carved out and zoned agricultural? Can you just straighten me out on all these various intertwined zoning things, please?
So this is a separate application. It's on the same land that the subdivision would be on. But as I understand, the owner of the subdivision, if that were to be approved and sold out, that would be, and the parcel south of that would be the last two parcels sold. Just because that's where the agricultural access is provided to get down to the southern half of the other property. That's how they access that for agriculture. So that's why the access would be different. But that's what I know.
So this stays zoned agricultural though?
It would change.
So is a cell phone tower allowed on a small lot residential zoned parcel?
I believe that, and I'll just double check here, but I believe that they're allowed with their conditional use permit on any type of zoning. But let me just double check. I've got my regulations open right now. I'm pretty sure that's how it is, but just to double check here.
If this may
Yeah.
not matter, this is Drew from VistaBeam. Just wanted to clarify, this tower is not a cell phone tower. It's for fixed wireless broadband access. So it's, I don't know if that matters at all, but I just wanted to clarify. So there'd be no cell phones allowed here.
Yeah, so Ms. Henning, or Mr. Chairman, Ms. Henning, towers are allowed with the conditional use permit on any zone except for neighborhood business zone. So any of the zones you can have a tower on, as long as they can meet the criteria of the tower permit.
So then this application, and I don't think it has anything to do with what VistaBeam is doing. You've just picked a parcel that's like moving and shaking. So I appreciate the clarification from VistaBeam. I want to be clear, I'm all for expansion of broadband out in the county, and I think it's been really great to see the expansion from your company. I'm a customer as well. So it just seems like the zoning is a separate issue apart from the tower, but that this application should then include a conditional use permit, which right now it does not.
Well, the tower permit is the conditional use permit. It covers those things, plus it's specific to towers. It's similar to our wind regulations, our wind tower permits.
Okay, so they're a one-stop shopping, which is very efficient of the county, and I applaud you.
Correct.
So, okay, well then that takes care of that concern. Thanks for explaining that. The other things that I just noted in the comments that were received both by the Highway Department and from Wyoming Game and Fish, they had some recommendations about entering the property if the subdivision were to go forward through that to lessen the exit and entrance onto a busy roadway. I'm sure it's not that high traffic, I'm sure, to maintain a tower. And then the second thing was the facility lighting recommendations. I wondered whether when it gets time to ask the applicant questions, whether they're open to voluntarily implementing those lighting recommendations. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hanning. Mr. Hinckley?
Yeah, actually, kind of following up on something that Commissioner Hanning just asked. Mine is a kind of a procedural question. What of whom do we solicit comments for these kinds of things? And there's kind of a list that we typically see: Road and Bridge and the naming folks for those subdivisions. Game and Fish, sometimes not. So first question is, who do we routinely ask for comments on applications that are before us? And then the second question was actually asked by Commissioner Richardson at their last meeting. Why are we doing this? And do we have any authority to enforce any of these things? I mean, let's take this one. Here's Game and Fish. Say they had said this will eliminate the antelope population of the Laramie Basin. Is there any provision in in our regulations to say you can't do it because of those ill effects? I'm thinking the answer is no. So tell me about why are we doing this? And what is Game and Fish, what's their role in this process?
So I guess the first question, who do we send it to? We actually have a form, a referral form that we use, and it has all of the folks that we send it to on a routine basis. Plus there's, we had to add people, if there's certain organizations that might want to know about that. So we send it to all the county departments, which would include like the sheriff's office, the fire warden, those folks. We send it to our county engineer. We send it to the fire district chairman, so that he can look at these things. We send them to YDOT. We send them to the Game and Fish Department. We send it to the post office. The Conservation District, we send it to LRCD. I think that's pretty much the list. Like I said, if it was, if it was near someone else that may want to know about it, maybe it's near like BLM land or Forest Service land or something like that, we would probably add those folks as well. But that's the list. So that answers that question. And if you're interested, we could send you a copy of the referral form that we use typically that has the list of the normal people we send it to. But
Yeah, yes, please do.
will you do that?
Sure.
Okay. And then the second part of the question, what can we do? What we typically do is we pass those on to the applicant, and where these are like a conditional use just specified for towers, we do ask that they follow the recommendations of these other organizations a lot of times. It kind of depends on what we get, because sometimes you get like a form letter that you've seen a million times and you're like, well, what's really the big deal about this project, But then there's others that's really specific where it's like, hey, this is really a problem. This is in crucial winter range for deer or something like that. We're recommending these things for that. And we try to, at the staff level, kind of convey that to the applicant and work with the applicant on those recommendations. And I think, some of those things we could include in our recommendations of the Board of County Commissioners if we want to make sure that those things are kind of dealt with. Like a subdivision, which is not what we're looking at, but a subdivision, we can ask folks to, hey, they're asking for wildlife friendly fencing around the perimeters. We could ask them to put that in their covenants, those types of things. So I get, some of the stuff may not be, enforceable. But there is a lot of stuff that I think we can at least recommend to the board. And where this is a conditional use permit, I think we can put conditions on it as long as it doesn't go too far and, go to the point where we're asking for things that don't apply to the application or something like that, if we're asking for recommendations from these agencies that know more about these projects and the effect on their areas, I think it's appropriate to use some of that in our reviews and our recommendations of the Board of County Commissioners. So
Okay, now, and the germ of that, which I say Commissioner Richardson kind of put the point on, and to say we can refer to the board, I don't think, we are basically sitting in here as the Board of Commissioners. We're going to give them a recommendation, and our decision space is basically the same as theirs.
Mhm.
Can the Board of County Commissioners say, and I don't mean this to be a tower specifically, but any of these things, and apologies to this applicant that we're using this as a springboard for the larger discussion, but it's one we've been having all year. Can the Board of County Commissioners on a subdivision application say approved contingent upon wildlife friendly fence? Do they have the authority to do that?
That's kind of out of my area into the county attorney's area. So if anybody from the county attorney's office wants to take a stab at that, I mean, I've got my opinions, but I don't know if they're correct. So
Well, and maybe there's not a definitive answer, but if Jennifer has something to add to this, I'd be willing to hear it. And let me sharpen that pencil even another notch. DEQ, we are required by state statute to ask them for their opinion, and they provide an advisory opinion expressed as an adverse or non-adverse notion. But again, when I take Commissioner Richardson's question to heart, and I look through our regulations, if DEQ said, terrible idea, we hate it, I don't find where we have authority to say, under our current regulations, don't do it. So, all right, Jennifer, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say with Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Chairman Moore.
Go right ahead, Ms. Kern.
Thanks. I have to tell you that I have to look at the regulations closer and get back to you. I am at home sick with a sick kid. And so I don't have my printed regulations in front of me, and I am not as good at David as scrolling quickly through the online ones. So I will look that up and get back to all of you.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's a continuing discussion. So thank you for that. And I look forward to that discussion. And then it bears on our last agenda item is, do we need some regulation changes that give us the authority to do what we think we have the authority to do right now? So that will move on. As far as the Vista Beam, I concur with Commissioner Hanning. I think it's great. The more we can do to make broadband accessible to all the citizens of the state, the better we will all be. So thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Mr. Kennedy, do you have any questions for staff on the Vista Beam Tower?
No, but on the discussion here, I think when there is an adverse recommendation from one of our referring agencies, the way I've read the regulations, that does give us grounds to, one, ask for that to be corrected, or if it cannot be, then we can recommend to the commissioners to deny something. And that has nothing to do with this application. And with that, I'd be happy to move on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. No questions at this time for myself. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative care to, if there's any information that you feel that needs to be addressed with the commission, right now would be your opportunity.
The only thing I guess I wanted to mention is I'm trying to find the letter here, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, in their letter where they said that they commend the proponent for the following best practices for reducing collision risk to birds by minimizing the footprint of the disturbance, using a self-supporting structure with no guidelines, using no tower lighting, and constructing a tower that will not exceed 199 feet in height. And they asked that we would use no lighting, which we don't plan to do. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. It sounds like the structure we're proposing, according to the Fish and Game, is going to have the least impact on the birds and wildlife in that area. And I think I heard it mentioned, if we would kind of comply with the lighting recommendations. And yes, we didn't have any plans to light the tower at all. So I think we're complying with 100% of those recommendations.
Thank you. Hold on one second here. Does anybody from the commission have any questions for Mr. Wicker? Ms. Hanning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wicker. So will there be any lights on the facility underneath, the housing beneath the tower? I don't know what you technically refer to that at, but that seemed to be the lighting that they were trying to get at. Was they were saying everything is really great about this tower, but what about the bottom structure where you probably have all sorts of things behind boxes? And I'm sure a worker sometimes needs that lit. So can you address the lighting on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sometimes at a tower site, there'll be a small building, kind of a little stone building, which would typically have some lights on it, a light at the door, maybe a spotlight. For this particular tower, we're planning on using, and we commonly use this type of enclosure. It's not going to be a building. It's just going to be an aluminum cabinet would be the best way to describe it. So it's powder coated aluminum. It's about 5 foot high, maybe about 24 inches by 24 inches. It will not have any lighting on it whatsoever. No permanent lighting. Now, I suppose if we had a worker there doing some type of repair or maintenance and it was after dark, I'm sure there would be headlights from their pickup and, maybe a headlamp that they would have on, but that wouldn't, that would just be something that would be there for the hour they were working. So there will not be any permanent lighting whatsoever on any part of the, the cabinet structure tower, at all. So it should be
Thank you
completely dark, I
thanks.
guess.
Thanks for answering that, because I think as some of these wind farms potentially grow in our county, we got to look out for our feathered friends every chance we can right now, and every habitat they still have. Thanks.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hanning. Mr. Hinckley, any questions for Mr. Wicker?
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Kennedy?
None, thank you.
All right, and no questions for him from myself. At this point, we'll go ahead and open this application up to public comment. How we'll handle public comment is for everybody that's on the Zoom call, please raise your hand and I'll call on you so we can do it in an orderly fashion. And so at this point, I'll open it up to public comment. And again, raise your hand on your participant screen and I'll call on you for your response. I don't see any hands up, so I'll take it that nobody from the public would like to comment on this application. So I'll go ahead and close this to the public. Discussion. Any discussion from the Planning Commission?
Kennedy here. I would move recommendation of approval of the Vista Beam Harmony Tower application LUCT 0221 to the Board of County Commissioners, incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as listed in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Hinckley, second.
Second for Mr. Hinckley. Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Hanning? Mr. Hinckley? Mr. Kennedy?
None, thank you.
Thank you. None from me. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley?
Aye.
Ms. Hanning?
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Motion carries. Will be sent on to the Board of County Commissioners. We will move on to our next public application. Our next public application is the PAL zoning change application, LUC-08-21. David or Joe?
All right, the applicant for this is Tammy Powell, located about 18 miles down Highway 230. The request is to change zoning from agricultural to small lot residential. There were 3 reviews that I got back. Nobody had any concerns. Notice has been provided by posted sign, publication, certified mailings as required. Findings necessary for approval. The applicant has provided the required site plans and/or survey. The proposed zoning change generally follows the suggestions of the Albany County Comprehensive Plan, including but not limited to the long-range growth plan and priority growth areas. This is priority growth area 3. The applicant has addressed all potential impacts. I will say that Wastewater will need to be dealt with according to the Albany County wastewater regulations. Findings of fact, the findings necessary for approval as listed in the staff report are incorporated herein as findings of fact. Conclusions of law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with the requirements of the Albany County zoning resolution. Our analysis was that the applicant has provided a complete application and has addressed the potential impacts this use may cause. This property is in priority growth area 3 and is zoned agricultural. The applicant wants to subdivide their property into 24 approximately 4-acre lots, which will require approval of this land use change and a subdivision application. The applicant will need to follow the Albany County wastewater regulations for new septic systems and turn in zoning certificate applications for all new buildings on the lots. Our staff recommendation is to approve the Powell land use change application LUC 0821 based upon and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions from the commission for the planning office?
Yes, who's up?
Mr. Kennedy, do you have any questions for planning staff?
None, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hinckley.
Yes, thank you. Kind of some context here. Many of the surrounding lots are, well, they're anywhere from, gosh, what did they come up with, 1 to 35 acres. How is it that this came to be zoned rural residential in the first place? This is kind of a history question for our planning director, I guess.
The
As opposed to small.
area,
Yeah, I mean, it could have been small lot residential, it was zoned rural. How do we get to where we are right now?
so we did we created the zoning map. There was a committee known as the Zoning Advisory Committee. They met over a period of time and looked at current land uses of property and currently what it was zoned or what it was taxed as. And used a lot of the assessor's information. So anything that was residential pretty much went to rural residential, unless it was like near the city or within a district or whatever where there was a lot more of the smaller lots. But it was a decision by them, and then it went through planning and zoning, and they reviewed all these areas. And their philosophy at the time was to just kind of keep things as they are, as the assessor had already, designated their land use, and they kind of follow that. And yeah, so anything that was outside or not next to the city that was residential was zoned rural residential. I think it was kind of the way that it came about. Whether that was the right way to do it or not, that was what was done. So,
Okay. Well, and what I was thinking there is what would be one of the findings that we have to make is that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the surrounding areas, which would suggest rural residential zoning rather than small lot zoning. And we can discuss that maybe as we proceed here. But let me ask as a procedural question: can we approve something different than what they asked for? Like, could we approve a rural residential zoning change rather than a small lot residential change? Or would we have to, if we wanted to do that, would we have to reject this application and request a different one? So it's just a procedure question.
that would be what I would say is we have been provided an application with a specific request, and that's what we have to review and base our decision on. So I would say, yeah, we would have to reject it. If they wanted to come back and do the rural residential, then they could, but we would have to reject it. Yeah.
Okay. Similar question. There was a discussion with this county engineer related to a variance for a long cul-de-sac. Would that change at all if we were in a rural residential zoning rather than a small lot residential zoning? Would that make any difference to that cul-de-sac variance?
No, the only requirements for the cul-de-sac variance is if the lots are over an acre and planning and zoning is okay with allowing that. And so whether it's small lot residential or urban residential, whatever, it's still the same criteria. The criteria for the variance is based on the subdivision regulations and not necessarily based on zoning specifically.
Okay, it's 1 acre or anything else is the criteria.
Yes,
Okay.
or more. Yeah.
Another, just to get our ducks in a row, we got adverse comments from Nielsen and Lenhart. Were they part of the standard public notice? Did they get a letter some time ago? And tell us about that.
So I'm not sure how they were if they're adjacent property owners, which are they adjacent? So they should have received notice via certified letter. If they're contiguous to the proposal. They're also notified by a sign and also in the newspaper. But the planning office doesn't seek them out and contact specific people. We have the requirement that they provide on the application that the applicant provide a list of those that are right next to them, that they're contiguous. And that is the list that they're required to send certified letters to.
And when would those letters have gone out?
They have to go out at least 14 days before this meeting. So it'd have been 2 weeks ago on Wednesday. I'm not sure when they went out, but that's the requirement to meet that 14 days, at least.
So we did that, I assume. I'm just kind of seeing where we were. So you can tell us that those were sent out at least 14 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe this is jumping ahead a little bit, but the water situation I was unclear on. Has the city agreed to supply water if they do the subdivision, or is that something that's down the road, or maybe it's not relevant to the zone change, but just as background, what is their situation with respect to the city, if you know, and maybe it's a question for the applicant.
Tammy Powell has her hand raised.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Hinckley, the city of Laramie has approved the use of the water for this small subdivision, but I have to form a water district according to state statute, which I, of course, will do. I'm in the process of doing, but want to wait to get your thoughts and, a little further down the line before we get all that going. But we can use the water.
They aren't concerned about another 24 taps on their pipeline.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I guess that's all I've got in terms of questions for staff at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Ms. Hanning, any questions for staff?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wilmes, for putting this packet together. Yes, I do have some questions. Well, had it not been for the companion preliminary plat application, there would have been a lot of information, I think, kind of lacking in this as a standalone application. I just found the one-page narrative that was included was a little bit light on detail. And so some of the things that I'm struggling with to be able to evaluate this land use change, and it's not your fault. You reached out for comments from the sheriff, but you didn't get comments back. I'm curious about the impact on our county resources that way, to have 24 residences out that far from the city. And I know the sheriff is already all over the place, and they do a tremendous job of getting out on our county roads. But I just still would feel better knowing how they feel about this kind of density increase. So it made it hard to evaluate the utility and resource aspect that we have to in what is it in subpart H, or sorry, better get my glasses, H. Impacts on public services, utilities, and public facilities. So I'm having a hard time evaluating that Also, I guess I'd feel better seeing the water district paperwork and the agreement with the city on the water. It seems like a big piece of supporting this kind of density. And it would make me feel better to see that, whether it's rural residential or smaller. Another, I guess, a question I have is, can you tell me how the nearby residences get their water currently? Are they all on private wells, or are they somehow having permission to tap into the city water line?
I mean, I don't know if I can answer for each property owner, because I know in the past there's been agreements between the city and property owners to have, taps, but I think it had to do with right of way and whatever they did to create their relationship. I would say that the majority, just guessing, are on well water, so. Or
Okay,
hauling
thanks.
water, I'm not sure, so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know it's asking you to speculate because that's not a part of the application. So I just didn't know if, in your experience in the county, if you had a sense of where people are currently getting their water out there. And maybe later some of the residents online will offer an answer. The other questions I have about this application, there isn't a discussion also, and maybe you have to remind me, Mr. Gertz, whether there's a reason why we don't find out from the school district how something impacts them. With the proximity next to Harmony School, it could either be like the district is, yay, we got enough students to come and support the teacher out there. Or will it be like, oh, well, there's a portion of them that are going to need to be bused to town and we're going to have to send another bus out. Can you remind me how the district evaluates these, or are they just sort of left at the whim of our decision making?
So I don't think this application was sent to the district. So I mean, the priority growth areas, just to kind of go back to the comprehensive plan, are based on, those types of services. The areas that have access to those services, it's, those are considered, priority growth areas 1, 2, and 3. The 4 is where you don't have a whole lot of services. So this area was evaluated, and those are the criteria that were looked at. And this was shown as a good area for that. But as for how this will impact, and this plan was done, years ago too, but so I'm not sure if things have changed or anything like that, but yeah, they would have to, I mean, I know they have people that work out there, they may see the sign, but I don't know if anybody cares enough to find out what's going on, or if the district was interested in this or not. We didn't send it to them, so.
So they kind of just respond to where the kids are, where the need is.
Right. Sure.
Then I guess the last question I had about this potential increase in traffic, I don't think I noticed anything looking at the potential increased traffic on this 2-lane road. And did I miss that?
No. I know that Tammy had reached out to I believe YDOT, and they said that they were not interested in putting in a turn lane. So I'm not sure how that affects, and Tammy has her hand raised again. So if she wants to add on to that.
I hope it's okay to answer questions, Manning or Hanning, because I have looked at this. So I did talk to YDOT. And to go back a little bit to Vista Beam's application, if you look on the plat, the current driveway on the east side of the subdivision is what I call the ag access, because I own land south of this. That is the access that Vista Beam will use, and I will use to take care of my cows that summer on the meadow south. I'm required to put 2 new cuts in if this subdivision is allowed to go through, to accommodate where you see the roads come in. So there'll be 1,325 feet west of the current ag one. And then there's one farther down next to where Simon's Corner is to me. And then I just wanted to let you know that I did send notice to the Albany County School District of this plan.
Thank you so much, Ms. Powell, for offering that clarification on those two issues. I appreciate that. Let me just check here, make sure I don't have any more questions about the zoning. Don't mind. No, that's it for my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hanning. Let's see, Mr. Kennedy, did you have any questions for the applicant, for commission?
None, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hinckley, I see your hands up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry I missed this on my first pass. Again, a question for planning staff. And I'm sensitive to the issue of unintended consequences, as we discussed with respect to that wild horse zoning change last month. If this were to go forward and the 4-acre lot subdivisions, 4.3s, and it were zoned small lot residential, could one of those lots then, under their small lot residential zoning, split?
They're like 4, average like 4.
So,
It would still be it would still be larger than 2-acre lots, which would be consistent with small lot residential, not with rural residential. That's
right,
correct.
so yeah, technically they could split it in half, yeah.
Okay.
But you'd be subdividing a subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, they have to go through the subdivision process again to do it, but yeah, they could do that.
Right, but correct, let me lay this out, the scenario, and tell me if I've missed the boat somewhere. Again, like the issue we had out of Wild Horse. These zoning changes are really the meat of the matter, I think, in terms of how we, planning and zoning in the county, directs land use in the county. And once something has been zoned, as we've been reminded repeatedly over the year, rural residential, for example, somebody comes in with a 5-acre lot subdivision, and maybe, as has been pointed out to us, people think, well, that's crazy. It ought to be 10, or as the city has argued, it ought to be 35. And the answer has come back quite credibly from our legal advisors. No, you zoned it for 5 acres. They're at 5 acres. You basically have to give them their subdivision. So that's the scenario I'm playing forward here. Not that Ms. Powell had any intention at this point to do that, but could one of the folks who bought the lots then say, say, I am zoned small lot residential. I would like to do a little subdivision here and have 2-acre lots. I can still meet the criteria of small lot residential. And we can say, oh, well, but we would get to review that. But I'm thinking we really wouldn't. It would be a done deal at this decision to assign a zoning classification to it. Am I seeing that correctly?
I mean, it still has to go through the approval process. Yeah, I would assume that it would get approved. I mean, it depends on what the, yeah, by our standards, yes, you could. Jennifer's on there, so maybe you should let her answer. So,
Ms. Curran, your hands up.
Yep. Chairman Moore, I just wanted to address what Mr. Hinckley was talking about. And it would come if somebody requested to split one of these into a 2-lot parcel, it would have to come back before you guys. And in addition, it would have to meet all of the requirements for the water district. They'd have to get permission from the city to add a new tap. There's a lot of things. There would be opportunity to comment, all of those things. So it wouldn't necessarily be that it has to be approved. If there were 0 objections and all the approvals were fine, then planning and zoning and the commissioners, if it met all of the regulations, there likely would have to be an approval. However, if there were objections and concerns raised throughout the process, and those were valid with regard to the proposed further subdivision, that does give the Planning and Zoning Commission and the commissioners the ability to reject an application if those objections meet or reflect the need that, or reflect the idea that the proposed subdivision is not consistent with our regulations, which, I mean, it seems a little like splitting hairs, but it's hard for me to say that something shouldn't be created when now it meets our regulations, because in some future instance that's not in front of us or even currently contemplated by what we have in front of us, we should deny it outright. So that's where I get a little hung up. I think it's very valid to consider all the regulations and all of those things as you talk through all of this, but I would also just recommend that everybody keep in mind what the regulations are in front of us now and what's being proposed in front of us now, and weigh that against potential future issues that may or may not develop.
May I respond?
Go right ahead, Mr. Hinckley.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate that and the care with which you're choosing your words, but that's exactly my point. And we are creating regulations here when we change the zoning. So this isn't an application of regulations, this is a creation of regulations. And it has all the repercussions that flow down from there. So again, all of the, oh, but we'd have to do this and that and that and that aside, if at this point we felt that 2-acre lots were unacceptable with respect to surrounding land use and the comprehensive plan, now is the opportunity to say that, and it is the only opportunity to say that. Down the road, if the county's only objection to a subdivision was the lots are too small, that ship would have left the pier right now. So I do think it is reasonable to look down the road at what we are putting on as constraints for development going forward. And if we want to put a constraint going forward that 2-acre lots are too small, now is not only our opportunity, but again, our only opportunity. Am I saying that incorrectly, Ms. Curran?
Not necessarily incorrectly, but I think you're not creating regulation in doing this. You're deciding whether or not to apply existing regulation to this. So you're deciding whether or not you're going to choose to allow the change to apply the existing small lot residential, or whichever it is. I'm sorry, I don't have it right up in front of me, to this, the existing regulations for those parcels to this subdivision. And in relation to your question about the lot sizes around it, if you look at the maps that were provided in the packet, there's numerous lot sizes, even on that. There's at least 4 on that east side of 230 that are adjacent to the boundaries of this subdivision that are small lots, as well as one's kitty corner across the road from the northwest corner that are also smaller lots. So I just would, it's not like we're throwing these tiny lots in the middle of 80 acres. But certainly is something to consider, yes.
That is correct if somewhat overstated, but we are putting 24 lots in an area. This is a major expansion of the residential area. Granted, it was identified as a priority growth area 3, and it's an obvious node for that expansion. So again, I'm not arguing that. The actual numbers of all adjacent lots, there are a whole series of 35, 40 acre lots. There's a 4, a 3, a 4.3, a 4.5, 4, a 4.5, 6, 1, and 1. So those are the actual numbers. So we do not have a history of 2 acre lots in the area. And I personally think that it would be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the best interests of the residents in the county to not open the door to 2 acre lots. And yes, I am looking down the road, but we can refrain from opening that door by zoning this rural residential rather than small lot residential. So, and I respectfully disagree on whether we're making regulations or not. We can discuss that at another time. Thank you.
All right, so now that we've been through all the commission, at this point, I'm going to give the applicant or applicant's representative an opportunity to address the commission.
So hello again, this is Tammy Powell. And Mr. Hinckley, I certainly appreciate your concern for 2 acre lots because my covenants won't allow any further subdivision. 4 acres is my vision for this subdivision. I grew up out here. I went to grade school at Harmony School. I've walked on that ground I own most of my life. And my vision for this is to see middle to high-end houses with families that want to have the experience of having country living. I'm not trying to make a little suburb. I want to make a nice subdivision to give families a chance to get out of town, to allow their children to have 4-H animals. So I just wanted to preface that and let you know that my covenants will not allow any subdivision smaller than the original lot sizes.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. At this time, is there any questions that the commission have directly for Ms. Powell? Mr. Kennedy?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hinckley?
I'll just ask her the obvious question. What is your reaction, Ms. Powell, to a 5 acre lot minimum? It would require, it would trim your number of lots by 2, I think. What do you think of that idea?
Well, honestly, we've looked at that, but the way the lots lie, this just made the more sense. Again, I'm not, the best and highest use of this land is subdivision. I've owned this since 2003. It grows about enough grass to feed my herd of cattle for maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks in the summer. So when it occurred to me that I had the utilities running through here and that maybe I could get some kids to have an opportunity to, go to Harmony School, we looked at that. I'm not opposed to that. I've spent a lot of money on these drawings, obviously, because it costs a lot of money to go through this. But I want to do a nice subdivision. And if your commission feels that these lots are too small for what you see the direction Albany County going in, I'm not opposed to that. I just want people to have a chance to live outside of town in a nice subdivision.
Mr. Chair, just while we've got Tammy, thank you for your comments. Are you aware of the comments we've received from the couple of your neighbors, Nielsen and Leonard?
I am.
And I don't know, is now an opportunity to respond to that, or do you want to wait until we
Well,
hear
all I
from
can say is that, I've been in the title business for 40 years. And unless someone's directly involved in a real estate transaction, they have no knowledge of that real estate transaction. So they have no business talking about it unless they got paid a commission or did the closing. And I've also been asked to sell one of those parties some property. But right now, from the last conversation I had, I don't believe that what I'm asking for those lots is anything they're willing to spend. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about those letters. I mean, I was certainly surprised at one to think that I would do anything that was less than professional, which I would never, ever do. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you for that. I think those comments were sort of self-explanatory, and everybody likes things the way they are. We're a conservative state. So the question is just what level of change is compatible. And here's two people who think this isn't, obviously others who think it is. So no, thank you. And I have no question that you're proceeding in a responsible way.
Mr. Hinckley, could I say one other thing?
Yeah, please.
Simon Ranch Company, we've got two people that have objected to this subdivision, but Simon Ranch Company is probably going to be impacted. You know, they own the property south of my meadow, which is the land that I own south of this subdivision. And they called and asked me directly questions, because I know most of those people out there, and I've encouraged them to call me directly, because if someone has a question about what I'm doing, I would prefer to answer that directly to them so that we don't get letters like were presented this morning. And Simon was very happy in the direction that I was proceeding. So I just wanted to let you know that I've had conversations with, and Hewlett's, you know, I've had conversations with them. So I'm not trying to make anybody mad. I'm just trying to do a nice, responsible subdivision.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Powell. Ms. Hanning, do you have any questions for Ms. Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Powell, for your continued presence during the meeting. It's not hard when we have dust ups with neighbors, and I just want to assure you I'm making my decisions based on zoning regulations solely, and I just want to follow up with what Member Hinckley said, which, and I got to say I feel the same way, that I'd be all for a rural residential subdivision out here with a water district already figured out and proof from the city that they can handle giving more taps out. I agree with Member Hinckley that as soon as we rezone something small lot residential, regardless of your intentions, we're basically giving approval to a land use table that says you have all these allowable uses. And one of the allowable uses to future property owners would be to subdivide down smaller. So as soon as we give an approval to small lot residential, it does open the door. And in fact, I assume that you as an applicant, once you get this, if you were to get the zoning change, you could turn around and come in with a final plat that showed a completely different subdivision of the land. I mean, Mr. Gertz can correct me if I'm wrong, but things can change a bit between a preliminary plat and a final plat in terms of how you want to allot the land, given what your permissible use is. So I'm really hesitant to go with small lot residential that far out of town, because I think it was meant for places that already have water districts, not a promise to get one. And that they were meant to be closer to potential extension of sewer lines, which this looks like in the foreseeable future wouldn't be happening. And so just out of my framework for decision making, I wouldn't be able to support this land use change as small lot residential, but I would be able to support you given what I know right now with a rural residential land use change. Thanks again for your participation. These meetings are hard.
Thank you, Ms. Hanning. At this point, we're going to open this up to public comment. And again, anybody wishing.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I had an opportunity.
Oh,
yet.
did you not? I apologize, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I believe I heard you mention earlier, Ms. Powell, that you had covenants planned. And could you illuminate that a little bit more? And my understanding is those are often filed with the preliminary and final plat. And I think that my belief is that that answers this question about small lot residential and whether those can be subdivided in the future. Could you expand on that a bit?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And I want to back up a little bit because my understanding, and Flint Polson, who's at Coffee Engineering, is on this meeting also. But my understanding is this was small lot. This wasn't, or it was rural residential, not small tracts. And we went with an average of 5 acres. So I'm a little, Ms. Hanning, when you were talking about that zoning, and because I specifically had conversations with the engineer about this, that we didn't do small lots, that we went with rural residential. And Flint, can you help me here? Because am I all wrong thinking that we picked a 5 acre minimum that included part of the road there? Can you help me, please? If that's okay, Mr. Kennedy, and then I'll answer your question about the covenants.
That'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah, with these, I mean, everybody's right about thinking that we could turn it into really small lots, but that is not the intent. The intent is to have nice big lots with water, city water, so there won't be any impact on anybody's wells or anything in that manner. And so this is just a well thought out subdivision that frankly fits very well with the area. And so I think Tammy's right on the way she's approaching this and doing it in the right way, not just kind of making it into a hobo place. It's going to be a very respectful subdivision.
But Flint, when we were planning this, didn't we plan rural residential lots, not small lots?
Yeah, we were, well, but when you go below the 5, then it is a small residential, rural residential, but still it's within the code. And especially with having city water, you're not going to run into, getting wells too close or septics too close to one another.
So maybe my confusion is I thought that the small tracts were 2 acre tracts. Would that be possible that we had that conversation, Flint?
We never even approached that conversation.
Right, but the small tracts I was thinking was 2 acres, but okay, well, thank you. So Mr. Kennedy, 2 things. Ms. Hanning has asked about the water district and the covenants, and I would certainly share those with you, but I didn't know it was in the regulations to have it at for review at this meeting. I mean, like I said, I've been a title person, and I've never had anybody tell me they had to have those at these meetings, or I'd share those with you. I mean, I'm happy to share them with you if that's part of this process. I mean, the covenants aren't going to allow any further subdivision. Now, one of the things my attorney, Greg Von Krosek, he used to be here with Pence McMillan. He's now in Sheridan. One of the things that has crossed my mind is you have the family exemption, for the subdivisions. I'm concerned about that because I don't want somebody out there saying, oh, well, I can take the south 2 acres of my lot and give that to my daughter. So we got to figure out a way in those covenants to prevent any type of subdivision. But if the commission could possibly guide me in if I was supposed to have those drafted for this meeting and I missed that, or if it is a requirement for these to go through, I'm a little confused right now.
Ms. Powell, they aren't required, and I'm perfectly comfortable with not having those until there is a final plat. And I don't think that you've done anything out of order. Sean could probably help me out a little bit on that, but no, I think at this point in the procedure, why just that you're intending to have covenants that would prohibit any further subdivision answers those previous questions. And with that, I'd turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kendi. No, Miss Powell, I mean, you're 100% within your right now. And looking at, and we've got to keep in mind as a commission, what we're looking at right now is a zone change. We're not looking at a preliminary plat, which we have next right after this. And as Mr. Hinckley said, this is the important part because this is going to lead to what we see next. But if you do look at the plat that was provided for us in the next application, the lots are between 4 acres and, I mean, I can't read it all because it's pretty small, but around 4 acres to 4.6 acres. And the thing with Ms. Powell's zoning is what she by right has the right to ask for specific zoning. And what she's asking for is small lot residential. And with our regulations, when you have a centralized water system, I believe you're able to go down to about a half acre lot. And so what we're looking at and what we're getting proposed here and what we're being told is that she wants small lot residential because it doesn't meet the 5 acre aggregate for rural residential and for those 2 extra lots or so 2-3 extra lots, whatever it is. So Ms. Powell, you're just fine. I don't think you've done anything wrong. And I think that you're within your process. Normally, before we get to a final plat, we will see a road maintenance agreement for your development. We'll also see covenants will be provided. Sometimes that's a condition. We have the preliminary at the final plat when they haven't been given to us. But the sooner you could get them to us, the better, because it's better to be open and upfront with everything so that we can make educated decisions. With that being said, people in the public that want to speak on this application, and we're going to give them that opportunity. And so anybody in the public that would like to speak on the participants side of your screen, raise your hand. I will call on you. And you can certainly comment on this application, and please state your name and your address, and we'll listen to you. And with that being said, I'll open it up to the public, and the first hand I see up here on the screens, Nathan Nilsson. So Mr. Nilsson, if you'd like to address the commission.
Yeah, thank you for the time and letting us be a part of this. My first question is I was presented with some covenants on this property right behind us that Tammy, when she sold it the first time, had covenants on it that it could not be subdivided. I just want to make sure why I'm guessing that she can take those covenants off once she buys that. I just want to make sure that that's clarified. And then more directly asking, why would she put those covenants on a property out her back door when she sold it, knowing that she probably didn't want neighbors or subdividing or a small tract residential, whatever the subdivision is going to be called, behind her home, and what has changed that opinion of hers?
All right, Mr. Nelson. Well, the only person that can put covenants on their piece of ground is the owner of the ground. And the only person that can take those covenants off that ground is that person. So if Tammy Powell owned the ground and put the covenants on it, she's the only person who can take them off. And that's and really we don't deal a whole lot with individual covenants because it's more of a civil item than what we're tasked to do, because we're more looking at has a landowner met regulations. But I could also give Ms. Powell the opportunity to respond if she'd like to that question. Ms. Powell?
Thank you. So I don't live out there, so it's not in my backyard. And as I said, Mr. Hinckley, I've owned this property since 2003. And as you may have noticed this summer, I had cattle up there and they're there for 2 to 3 weeks. It was an exceptional grass year this year. So when you take the taxes that you pay, the irrigation people that go through there, tear up the trees, all of that, subdivision is the best and highest use of my ground. And I am not a rich person by any means. I'm trying to get out of debt, and with the utilities that go through this, that's the nicest. I mean, I'm trying to do the nicest subdivision I can. I would not ever ask, I would never put something up next to someone that I wouldn't want to live next to. So, I mean, and I know you people don't know me, but that's how I am. I'm just not wired that way. I wouldn't do that. So if you have other questions, please ask me. I'm happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Ms. Powell. Mr. Nielsen, do you have any other comments?
Just a couple more on the, when we looked at the mapping on the zoning, it looks like one of the main roads would be directly off our fence line, which is, as I look out the back door right now, I'm guessing about 30 yards out my back door. As Tammy says, she takes in consideration of the surrounding neighbors. My highest concern would be the road traffic directly out my back door, that I currently have no view of any houses right now. Now we're adding 24 lots plus a road 40 feet out my back door. And now them lots can sound like say if I want to buy one of those lots, I can now divide that up. And as long as I follow the guidelines and the procedures that Tammy is, that now I could subdivide those up even more. So I'd definitely like to review that conversation of the 5-acre lots and some of the roads that are designed in this plot.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nielsen. We'll discuss that here and when we get through public comment. Let's see, Mr. Hinckley, do you mean for your hand to be up at this point?
Yeah, I was wanting to respond to something Commissioner Kennedy said, so.
Let's keep this open to public comment at this point, because we're still going to have discussion, Mr.
Okay,
Hinckley.
fair enough. Keep me in mind.
All right. All right. Do we have any other hands up? Anybody from the public that would like to speak? Comment on this zone change application?
The Brains have their hands up?
Oh, Cheryl Brent, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Troy Brin, and with me here is Cheryl Brin. And she owns the property at the very east side of this location. Currently, there are 4 houses there. And so this would directly affect her property to the south and to the east. We have multiple concerns that are, the ones that we share with Mr. Nielsen. We actually spoke with him and his wife last night, as well as the other neighbors in this four house section here. And the biggest concern that we have is that we said that, excuse us here for a second, this phone's going off. One of the concerns that we have is that as part of this original discussion was that it said that the impact study was conducted and all the concerns were addressed. And yet the four families that live here currently, we were sent letters, but there was no discussion about how this impacts us. Again, we're talking, yes, we do have Highway 230 to the north, but we all live back off that to the point where we live along the south fence line. And now you're talking about putting a major road, as Mr. Nielsen said, right outside our back door. And that causes great concern because there are families with little children here. And, now all of a sudden you've taken a basically rural agricultural environment, and you're dumping 24 people in our backyards, and you're basically creating a quasi-urban environment. And then to address what Mr. Hinckley said, I don't think we should leave this up to the covenants, and that you know, that as part of the discussion said that the person that puts the covenants on can therefore remove the covenants. So it sounds like we're leaving it to Ms. Powell to say, okay, well, now we're putting in 4.5, 5 acre lots. But if I decide down the road, since it was my covenant, now I can remove that covenant and therefore make it a 2 acre, a 1 acre, or basically whatever I want, because you approved a small lot residential. So I really think that that needs to be addressed. But the residents who live here are concerned because we were never made part of this process. And it really concerns me that by her own admission, Ms. Powell says that she's using this to make money. I get that. We're all about progress. We're all about this. We're all about that. But she doesn't live here. The people that live here, we're concerned that this is taking our country living and turning it into Laramie again. And that's the whole reason why we left Laramie, because we didn't want to live in that environment. So if those things could be addressed, we would greatly appreciate that. We do think that the 4 acres is too small. If it is going to be zoned residential, we would like to see bigger plots with fewer houses. You can still sell them for more money. You can still recoup those costs, but don't make this a part of Laramie. That's all I've got.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brin. Do we have any other comments from the public? Again, put your hand on the participant's screen on the right side. It says down at the bottom, raise your hand if there's anybody that wants to comment. Let's see. Is it Kaylee Linhart? Miss Linhart?
It's Callie Linhart. Yes.
Callie, sorry. I didn't
No,
see
you're
that.
good.
All right,
And I
go
have
ahead.
a little one in the background. I don't really have anything as far as the zoning and stuff, but I just want to reiterate what Mr. Brin said, that, you know, we all moved out here to get away from people, and adding 24 houses right out our back door is not ideal.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Linhart. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak on this application? And Tammy, I see your hands up, but you'll have another opportunity to speak here. I'm just trying to get through public comment. Not seeing any more. I'll go ahead and close this to public comment. Discussion. Mr. Brin, you have another?
Yes, I did have one more thing I would like the board to address if we could. Right now, because we do live in the county, even though this is zoned residential, we are afforded the privileges, I guess I would say, that come with not having covenants. So if I want to go out and shoot my 22 on the property, as long as it doesn't impede on the property around me, I shoot my 22. If I want to shoot off fireworks, as long as I've got a bucket and a hose nearby, I shoot off fireworks. How are the covenants on her property going to affect the people that live here that have already been here and enjoy those rights? How are her covenants going to affect the people that have been here? It would be a major question that all of us in this neighborhood have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bren. And with that, I'll go ahead and close this to the public hearing portion of this meeting. Discussion with commission. Mr. Hinckley, you said you had something you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, a couple of things that have come up here. One is the sequence, and I totally agree with you, Chairman Moore, that no, Tammy Powell is not in any way out of sequence. In fact, she may have gotten ahead of herself. The decision before us right now is a zoning change, and it may best have been taken care of simply as that, and then she could have moved forward with appropriate platting of her subdivision. So if anything, too far. And I don't think the plat or the city water or anything else we've been interested in for context really bear directly on the decision before us, which to be a clean question of should that be zoned small lot residential or rural residential, that decision should be made regardless of the personalities and their good intentions and whether it's my mother-in-law or anything else. That's a clean decision. As to covenants, and maybe Jennifer can advise us on that, I am very skeptical that the county has anything to do with covenants. I think you said it correctly a moment ago, Chairman Moore. Covenants are up to the homeowners and the owner, and they can change in a heartbeat. And I'm very skeptical that the county can say you aren't enforcing your covenants. And I think this has been to court in various places. Our decision has to be within our decision space, and that's zoning, and that's lot sizes, 2s, 5s, 10s, and whatever it is. So again, unless somebody could give us credible legal advice otherwise, I think the covenants are also irrelevant to this threshold discussion of the appropriate zoning of this piece. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Chairman,
Yep, go ahead.
I'm going to have to disagree there. And here is my reasoning. We've had a discussion here about the size of these lots, whether or not they could be subdivided in the future. We can require that the covenant be part of the final plat, which would restrict it because the plat is part of the formal record. While the county wouldn't enforce those, that makes it much more difficult to enforce a covenant, to change a covenant in the future when it is recorded as part of the final plat. And I'm comfortable at this point moving ahead with the zoning request, change request as presented, with the assurance that later on we will see that covenant with the final plat, assuming that we go through the rest of the process. And at that point, we can decide if we believe that that is adequate to prevent the issues that you've seen that have been discussed. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Kenyon, is that an actual motion, or are you just saying that you feel comfortable at this point?
Well, since you mentioned it,
I'd like to. Can we hear from Ms. Hanning before we move any further?
Well, and we can certainly discuss once there's a motion out on the table too.
And we can, and we will. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Ms. Hanning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just to close up on the conversation, I guess the idea of a covenant as a catch-all gives me cold comfort, just mostly because I haven't seen the Planning and Zoning Commission take covenants that have been recorded with final plats. I haven't seen them taken into consideration when members of those subdivisions have brought it to the attention of this body. So it gives me cold comfort to rely on covenants when a zoning approval would give blanket approval to the land use table in the zoning ordinance, so the zoning resolution. And I'm not comfortable doing that in this location. I would be comfortable with rural residential, as I told Ms. Powell. And I guess lastly, I don't think Ms. Powell did anything wrong. I just personally don't feel that I can evaluate what I think we're supposed to evaluate here in paragraph little h, which is impacts in public services, utilities, and public facilities. And I consider tapping onto the city water to be an important public service that I personally would like to take into consideration in making a decision of this weight. So I don't think Ms. Powell has done anything wrong, but nor do I think I have done anything wrong to ask for the information. So thank you guys, and I'll close out.
Thank you, Ms. Hanning. I think my comments on it are, you know, we gotta look at this from the zoning standpoint, and as Mr. Hinckley said too, which I agree 100% with him about, you know, this is a very pivotal moment because this is where we decide that we're taking that land from agricultural to small lot residential. And like I said earlier, in small lot residential, when you have a centralized water system, what our regulations allow, and we have to look at what we allow and what could happen on that piece of property. And Ms. Curran will probably add to this because again, I think that we've seen lately that we have regulations and we have to abide by those regulations, whether it's popular in the public or not. And it is totally understandable that the neighbors are not too thrilled about this because it's not what they moved there for or what their way of life has been. But you also have to take into consideration that they do not own the land. And when you infringe on somebody else's right, as far as you say you do not want somebody to their land next to it, well, at some point, if you live out there, you did that to somebody else. And that's part of owning land, and that's part of the right of owning land. And what we have to figure is the application filled out properly? And did the applicant go through the process which we require and we have set forth? And we can't move the goalposts at the 11th hour on anybody and say, you know, we don't really like this. We're not going to vote for it because we just don't like it. It's about what the law is. And that's why we're going to have that discussion here on current planning projects number 8. And this is why Mrs. Curran had her training with us is the questions we should be asking ourselves are the regulations met by the applicant? Because if they're not, that gives the applicant a leg to stand on and sue our county. So with that being said, from a planning commission member, either approve, deny, or table.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hinckley, go ahead.
If you're looking for a motion, I would move that we deny the zoning change application on the basis that the density proposed is incompatible with the comprehensive plan and with surrounding land uses.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for denial. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I would second the motion and move to amend the motion to include that the application, aside from not being compatible with the comprehensive plan, the general provisions of it, excuse me, it's also, as Mr. Hinckley pointed out, not compatible with subparagraph A, compatibility with surrounding properties. I'd also add that it doesn't meet little subparagraph C. It's not consistent with the pattern of development, seeing as how there is no small lot residential zoning, despite the small lots present. A decision was made at that time to zone it rural residential, and I think for good reason. And I don't think that changing small lot residential would provide a consistent pattern of development. And lastly, whether you agree with me or not, I think little paragraph H, impacts on public services, utilities, and public facilities has not been adequately demonstrated for me to be able to support this. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you. I was going to see if you're going to allow for that, all that addition. Okay, very
Sorry.
good. So
We'll come up
motion
with a Reader's Digest abbreviated version.
Okay, very good. All right, so we'll go ahead and take a vote here.
I have Chairman Moore.
Oh, yes. Discussion?
I would caution anyone about mentioning anything about the comprehensive plan in a motion, because it is now state law that cannot be used in decision making. And with that, I would be happy to.
Mr. Kennedy, you cut out there at the end. What was that?
And with that, I'd be happy to go ahead and take the vote.
Okay, very good. Mr. Kennedy,
No.
Ms. Hanning,
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley,
Aye.
and Commissioner Moore, myself, no. So motions
Okay.
fails due to a tie 2-2. So at this point, it doesn't look like there's going to be an approval. So our options are to table this to the next meeting. So do we have a motion to table this application?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Ms. Byrne?
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Ms. Hanning,
No.
Mr. Hinckley,
Aye.
and Chairman Moore, myself, aye. So this application for a zoning change has been tabled to the next meeting. And with that being said, the next application, public subdivision application SD-08-21. I think at this point, David, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's no need to hear this application since this first application has been tabled. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can't move forward with this next application until this application is dealt with first, so.
Okay, very good. So do we need a motion to table that application, or is it just assumed because the first application was tabled that this one is just tabled as well?
I would recommend a motion.
Okay, very good.
So
do I have a
moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. Do I have a second?
I will second it. Seems to me it's moot, but if our advice is that it needs to be tabled, then I will second the motion.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. I'll go ahead and take a vote. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Ms. Hanning,
No.
Ms. Mr. Hinckley.
Oh, yeah, could we have some discussion of the motion? I'm sorry, we kind of.
We sure can.
That's out of order. There's no discussion on a motion to table.
Was that right? All right, well, then
Yeah.
I'll yield till I get out my Robert's Rules of Order. All right, I vote aye.
Okay, and I myself, so the Harley Acres subdivision application SD-08-21 has been tabled as well to the next meeting. We'll move on from there. That ends our public application. So we're going to move on to current planning projects. And this is going to be a discussion, discuss the regulation changes requested from the Board of County Commissioners and, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hinckley, if I'm doing this correct, and other subdivision regulations. Correct?
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we'll start off with you, Mr. Hinckley. Give us your thoughts and kind of concerns. I don't believe I saw anything from the Board of County Commissioners or I wasn't in receipt of it, David.
Mr. Chair, I suggest we start with the county commissioners. They get precedence and let David report what they wanted to discuss. If that is in order with you, Mr. Chair, perhaps.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Heatley.
No, I'm saying let's yield to the county commissioners. What did they say through David?
He wants me to tell you guys.
Yes, go ahead.
It's a secret. No. No, I'm sorry, I didn't have anything written up. I just was running out of time, and this came from last week's meeting, I believe it was. So what they, well, actually, I say it was the commissioners, but it was the chairman. He requested that we look at two things. First was the running of preliminary and final plats together. He would like to see those split out for anything but small subdivisions, which is what we actually recommend to people. We ask them to do that. However, it's not in our rules. And so we can't really require them to do that. And I think this is a concern that has been brought up by this commission as well. So that was the first thing, and that could be a pretty easy change in our regulations, just to note that in there. And then we would have the legal backing to say, yeah, no, you have to run them separately in this situation. The other item that they discussed was, again, a discussion that this, actually it came from you guys and it went to them and then it came back to you. So, but the second dwelling issue was the other one. They wanted us to look at the second dwelling issue instead of going through the process of rezoning a property and then allowing, other things to happen instead of just another house on the property. When really that's all they wanted in the first place. We should look at those as well. And with those are the recommendations that they said verbally, or at least the chairman did. And yeah, we can discuss those and how we go about those. I will note that, and Chairman Moore was around as well, that we did go through the process of actually revamping that whole section on dwellings per acre, how many dwellings per, acreage that they could do. We revamped that and everything, and it went through this whole process, went to the board, was published, and then they tabled it and it never came back. So it's pretty much dead. Sounds like a few years ago. But we did go through that process. I mean, that's something we could resurrect. It was a little more complicated than just changing the land use table and, how many, places you can have on an ag piece of property or whatever, which maybe that's what we do right now. I mean, maybe that's a better idea, but I do have this other regulations that we could go through, but I just think it'll be more complicated than, maybe what we need to do right now. And I'm just saying that for staff time, because staff has a lot of things going on. There's 3 plans that are going on right now, and lots of applications coming in and those types of things. But we'll do whatever we're asked to do. Just how timely it will be, that will be determined on how much time we have. So
Thank you, David. I guess I'll go around to everybody. Mr. Hinckley, your comments on putting into the regulations that we have a preliminary and final plats split to not allow a final and preliminary plat to be presented at the same time. And then also your thoughts on second dwellings on properties. And then anything else you might also want to include.
Thank you. As usual, my first questions are procedural. We weren't making decisions here, but and I'll look into the kind of the legislative model that Commissioner Kennedy constantly refers to. Are we kind of instructing staff to bring forward a draft proposal? How does this go forward? If we all think, boy, that's a great idea, we'd like to see that. Do we ask David to bring us some drafts? Do we write them ourselves and bring them back to the commission? So maybe just as we move forward into possible regulation changes, David, could you tell us what's the process here.
Yeah, so I guess we can proceed in whatever manner you guys feel comfortable with. Typically, it would be, we would have a discussion here, you would direct staff to write those up and then bring it back for, more discussion by the board. But we have had, members of the commission kind of add their ideas or language as well to some of these things, and then we've discussed as well. But yeah, either way, I mean, we'll accommodate whatever you need of us, so.
All right, then to those specific points, Mr. Chair, if what our intention is the preliminaries and finals come in separately, and that was the question, sounds great to me, so I'm perfectly comfortable with asking David to go ahead and show us where we would change that in regulations and to move that forward. I don't know if we need a vote or just a sense of the commission, but sounds like that would be a pretty easy go. On the second dwelling, since there was a lot of work done, I think it was like 3 years ago. My memory of it is the same as Staff Director Gertz, that it ended up tabled. That would sure seem like an obvious place to start, unless one of you guys that was more involved wanted to change that. So perhaps that just needs to come back to us as a starting point for the suggestion. Just to kind of quickly go down my list, and not we need to have a big discussion of them now, but over the course of my very short tenure on the commission, I just feel like we have at various times come up against something where the feedback we got either from a legal counsel or staff is, well, that's kind of confusing, or that's not real clear, or maybe we could do something better there. And I think we just keep a kind of a running list of those. The comprehensive plan, one that Commissioner Kennedy just brought up, is absolutely front and center. And my earlier motion comes directly from our regulations, which instruct us that we need to make a finding that it is compatible with the comprehensive plan. Now, if that provision in our regulations is illegal, by all means, we should change it. I'm responding to the regulations before me. Earlier in today's discussion, there was sense that we do have the decision latitude to condition our approvals on adverse opinions from DEQ or the other agencies that we have asked for reviews. I'm frankly surprised to hear that, because I've never seen a list of which agencies get to play at that game. And it would seem if we have some formal legal authority to require an applicant do what Game and Fish says, it should say that somewhere in our regulations. Again, that's just kind of on my list. And then just a quick invitation to you, senior in tenure, not in age members of the commission. Several years ago, Commissioner Cunningham had set up a process where the commission took on different projects and they were all listed. And then it seems like you guys had a ranking matrix, and maybe that's a way to proceed with this discussion. So I guess with that, I'd kick it back to you, Chairman Moore and Commissioner Kennedy. Did that work, or was that a bad idea, or could we resurrect that to good purpose? So that's kind of my thoughts on the issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Appreciate that. And I'll get to you, Ms. Henning, here in a second. I'll address one item, was the ranking matrix that Mr. Cunningham provided. Mr. Cunningham was a great member of the Planning and Zoning Commission and a wonderful man to work with and get to know. But I feel like his ranking system, I don't think we ever did it. And I think that, I don't think we ever did it. David, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we ever, we were handed out what we wanted to rank priority, but I just around 2 doing it, did we? I don't remember it.
Chairman Moore, my recollection's pretty good in that regard, I think. We did complete that matrix, but we didn't get very far down the list. And one of those items is the one that was mentioned that was tabled by the commissioners. So we worked our way down through the list, but we didn't get very far through it just because of issues of time. And Chairman Moore, I'll just follow up a little bit on those first 2 points. I think it'd be entirely appropriate to ask staff to draft something so that preliminary and final plats are run separately for all except small subdivisions. And I think with those, it makes sense. They're not as complicated as larger ones. And that minimizes the cost for those applicants too, to only have their professional folks that they've hired have to come on to a single meeting, where I don't have that concern with larger subdivisions. And the second dwelling issue, I think if we brought back at least what was drafted before, because I did actually start to look at that wind application that David sent a link out to, and we're going to have plenty of other things to do. So I think one thing that has seemed to help in the past when we did these was to do one bite of the apple at a time. And so if we would tackle the preliminary and final plat issue, and I think my own opinion is that also helps the commissioners, because it makes it easier for them to consider one issue at a time rather than to have multiple things in a packet, and then we can move on to the next item. And that would be my desire at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Appreciate that. And thank you for reminding me we did start in on subdivisions, and I think that's when we kind of got hit with aquifer regulations and then the wind regulations. So I think that's kind of what happened to the matricy. That's kind of be expected from Mr. Cunningham because he was an engineer. But anyways, and Miss Hanny, I'm gonna go to you too, but I'm gonna say my piece here real quick is I agree with splitting the preliminary and final plats. Exactly what Mr. Kennedy said. I don't think that that's an issue at all, and I think that would be good practice. As far as the second dwelling on properties, I was really disappointed at the time when the county commissioners and I think our bigger issue with that was the way we had to look at it, or should have looked at it, is whether you're within the APOZ or you're not on the APOZ, because we've seen a lot of things countywide. For example, like that one application we had last month where we had to change the zoning just to allow for that. And that just didn't seem like that's good policy. But honestly, I think that before we jump into something like that, one thing that needs to be taken into consideration, and I would prefer, is this is my third to last meeting, I think third or fourth. I don't know if I'm going to be here in I don't know if I'll be in the January meeting or not, but my term's expiring, and so is Mr. Spiegelberg's. And so to jump into something like second dwellings on properties countywide, it might be better for you three existing members to maybe start that with the new, instead of having them have to try to jump in halfway through something, because it's real difficult. I mean, I know with Miss Hanning and Mr. Hinckley had to came on board in the middle of the wind regulations, and it's just tough. It's just tough. I mean, it's just the way it is, And so that would be my recommendation on that. I think that'd be good to look at, and I'd like to see some sort of outcome for our county on second dwellings in the county, because you never know if somebody needs to take in a parent or a family member, and I really don't, if they're hooking on to the same septic, let's say, I don't see a difference between a two bath house with a detached dwelling that has one bath and one kitchen, as opposed to somebody having a 6-bathroom house and 2-kitchen house in the county. I mean, it's allowed. And if that could ease the cost of housing for people and convenience for people, I mean, I'd be all for that. Anyway, Is that Ms. Hanning? What would you have to discuss, or what would you like to see?
Oh, I'm just in support, Mr. Chair, of all that I've heard about how to go about tackling things. Everything from breaking it into smaller chunks to accommodating any future changes in the makeup of our body here, and making sure people aren't going to drown when they jump in. So I'm for all of the things you guys have talked about.
Well, thank you, Ms. Hanning. Mr. Gertsch,
Yes.
would you be so kind to write up some verbiage and maybe get with Ms. Curran on what we need to do to amend our regulations about splitting the process of preliminary plat and plat, unless it's a small subdivision. And then, if you could present that next meeting or the meeting after, that'd be wonderful.
Will do.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there any other discussion any other planning commission members might have that they might want to add at this point?
Yeah, one thing.
Go right ahead, Mr. Hinckley.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear what you guys have to say on that issue. That's been a kind of a theme this year of the comprehensive plan and the regulations. And we've been admonished quite widely and authoritatively that if we want it in regulations, we better put it. Should we be looking carefully at those elements in the comprehensive plan that we want to bring into regulation to make that all square up?
Yeah, Mr. Hinckley, I think I'll address that, but I think Ms. Curran's hand's up. I think she's going to go ahead and address that for me.
Great.
I actually had a comment before Mr. Hinckley's, but does address that. I was wondering if it would also be okay with you, Chairman Moore, and other members of the commission, if Matt Ayers, who is the new civil attorney in our office, who I forgot to introduce, who is also on this call, and I worked with David to, in addition to the changes you discussed today, go through the zoning resolution and remove those references that are now, or that are reference the comprehensive plan as a basis for denial of anything, given that they are directly contrary to the laws that has been passed. And any other things that we would suggest from the legal side being changed, and bringing those back before this commission as suggestions as well.
That makes a lot of sense, Ms. Curran, but I want to respond to here real quick I think, my term's ending here pretty quick. And so, I don't think this is something that I don't feel like I should start and then not be able to finish. And I think it'd be good with the new members to start fresh with this. But absolutely, if with what we're told, and with what we have seen with court decisions, Asphalt Specialties versus Laramie County Planning and Zoning Board, that if those things in the comprehensive plan are important, we need to put them into our regulations. And so again, I think that is something that the commission going into 2022 should visit with, among themselves and with David and the Board of County Commissioners. And if that's what the Board of County Commissioners want to see, then by all means, I think that those things that are in the comprehensive plan that people want to hang their hats on for, denial or approval or whatever, they just need to be in the regulations. And I think that that's a process that, again, would probably need to be started, the beginning of next year. I think that it'd be good to include the new people on there, in their opinion, and run with it instead of having to jump halfway, going through it. But absolutely, I think that's kind of what the Board of County Commissioners have have kind of mentioned too that they would like to have. So that's just my 2 cents on that issue. I don't think at this point in my tenure on here, I don't think that that's something that we would be beneficial to the members of the county that we jump into right now. I think it'd be better on with new fresh people on the board.
Mr. Chairman, and this is kind of a comment and somewhat of a question for Jennifer and Matt. I think on that part, I think we could also look at that 2 ways. First of all, take the zoning regulation into compliance and then go through and put in what we want from the comprehensive plan. And that splits that load up somewhat as well and makes it easier for us and the commission. And my question for Jennifer and Matt is it possible to remove those references in a clean way, separate from what we do on a comprehensive plan, and how much time do you think it would take? Is that something that we could look at in November so that the commissioners could go ahead with that as well?
Chairman or Commissioner Kennedy, and with your permission, Chairman Moore, I think that is actually what the intention of my first comment was incorporating these just couple things that you guys discussed as being immediate concerns today, as well as from the legal side, removing those references to the comprehensive plan and bringing that back. And I do think, at least from our end, if Matt and I both have time to work on it, we could bring that back to you in November. And then we could look after the first of the year, as Chairman Moore had suggested, at whatever this commission at that time decides that they'd like to incorporate from the comprehensive plan into the zoning resolutions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kern. Ms. Hanning, you have anything to add?
I guess I'd feel better to do the switcheroo on the comprehensive plan when replacement language was ready to go in it. Because maybe my understanding of the asphalt industries versus Laramie County, I thought that was narrow about a parcel that lacked any zoning whatsoever, in which case the comprehensive plan had to be, what wasn't a usable document. But that seems like a different question than, can we look at the comprehensive plan to assess whether something's a PGA 3 or 4? So I guess I don't know if I think that you've convinced me that the courts have completely annihilated the ability to call upon that provision in its entirety, or if it's been whittled away to a narrower thing that can be looked to. But I myself would not feel comfortable scrapping those components without having something that was a placeholder of intent for what was to happen next.
Mr. Chairman, my comment on that is, while Asphalt Specialties was kind of the impetus, the statutory language that went into effect the 1st of July is more clear than the Supreme Court decision that essentially a comprehensive plan can't be the basis of decision-making with respect to land use. And that, I mean, we can cut around that however we want, but that's basically what that change in the statute says.
Chairman Kennedy, you're correct. Commissioner, sorry.
Thank you, Jennifer, or Miss Curran.
Great, I got promoted there.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Hanning, for your comments, Mr. Kennedy, and you too, Mr. Hinckley. Is there anything else at this point that under current planning projects that you guys feel that we need to discuss or should throw out there? Or have we done it all right for today?
Just so I understand what's going by sometime next meeting, if it's convenient, we will see language, regulation change on preliminary versus final. And we anticipate seeing Jennifer and Matt's exorcism of comprehensive plan from our regulations. Correct? Basically.
I think that's correct.
Okay, and then we'll proceed from there. Fair enough.
Yeah. And I think, just being in accordance of what we can and can't do would be good. But then I think that it's very important for the commission moving forward to, and I know with you and Ms. Hanning, Mr. Hinckley, that the comprehensive plan is very important to you and those elements in it. And I think just the impetus of the whole thing is that it needs to be in the regulations. And so I think that that's something you guys should tackle when you have a fresh commission and starting people out on the right foot, because it's just so hard to get into something when when you have to pick up halfway through something and try to play catch up. So yes, I think exactly what you said is correct.
Thank you. I think it'll be a long process, but we need to start and then we'll get to the end that much quicker. Yeah,
it will be. It'll be a long process, but it'll be good. And look forward to seeing what you guys do. I mean, my time here's almost up. So anyways, with that being said, we'll move on to other items, announcements. The next meeting will be November 10th, 2021 at 2 p.m. And then do we have any other citizen comments? And let me also add to that is that meeting November 10th, 2021 will also be on Zoom, just so you guys know, and the public knows. Citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments that are non-agenda related topics that anybody would wish at this point to bring up? So again, please put your hand up on the right side of the screen where it says participants, and at the bottom it says raise hand, and you click that button, and then I can see on the participant side that your hand's raised and I can call on you.
Those are great instructions. Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
If there isn't any, I did have a couple of things I just wanted to update you on, so.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you did raise your hand.
Sorry.
And expect me to see that.
We got rules.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I don't even know how to raise it.
We can't,
I don't think it gives me an option to do that.
because we're in charge of it.
Oh,
There it is.
well, oh, there it is. Yeah. I can thumbs up too. Check that out.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways.
Go ahead.
There isn't a thumbs down.
I don't even know how to put it down. I'm not very good at it. Okay, so anyways, just wanted to update you on a few things that are going on. Ms. Hanning, and it looks like Ms. Bath is on here. We're working through the natural resource plan that we were awarded funding to create as a county. We're working with a consulting firm, Y2 Consulting. We're moving through pretty quickly the chapters of this plan. We've had a public meeting, and it's been a really good process so far. We got some pretty good people on the committee. And so just wanted to update you on that. That's coming forward. That'll probably be coming to you guys here early next year, I would imagine, because we've got to get this done pretty quickly. So I just want to update you on that. Couple other things that are going on. There's a joint city-county collaboration going on with the update of the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan. We're in the process of awarding a bid to a consulting firm to update that as well. That would need to be finalized once the Board of County Commissioners and City Council determine, or either award the bid to who the committee chose or not. I guess we'll see what happens there. The it was actually a pretty close vote by the committee. There was a 1-point difference. And so that made it pretty interesting. But anyways, that's moving forward, and it's got a quick deadline or, timeline as well. It's supposed to be wrapped up by the end of next year, which it's going to be a huge update and a huge undertaking. So that's going to be pretty quick because as soon as this gets awarded, they need to start moving on it. The other thing is the city and county are doing a collaboration on extraterritorial planning. And so they're looking at creating a policy document with an agreement that the city and county will enter into to determine how we do development in that 1 mile area, make some determinations on that. I'm not sure exactly how that one's going to go. That one's in its infancy, but we will be doing an RFQ or whatever for that project as well. So just to keep you guys in the loop, because all of this will involve you at some point. I think that you'll probably be updated, hopefully like quarterly or more, especially on the CAT plan that's coming up. So you'll need to be involved with that, provide some of your input into that. And yeah, so just wanted to update. If you have any questions, there's not a whole lot, details I have just because everything's kind of getting going. But if there's questions about the natural resource plan, we've got some other resources on the line today too. So
What was the decision on the cap? You said you had awarded that contract or in the process of, is that public?
we're in the process. Yeah, we went through the process. The review committee chose a winner, but it has to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners and this city council before it's, official, I guess. Yeah, it was like, what is that word? But
All right, we'll know soon enough.
Yep.
Yeah. The next public appearance of the resource plan, is that scheduled?
I don't think that's for a while. I think we'll get through the draft first and then it's coming at the end. Do you remember, Laura, or?
I think the way they're progressing is having us go through chapter by chapter, and then they're gonna pull it all together and release the draft then to the public for, I can't remember what the comment period is. I don't know if Bonnie remembers or if you remember, David, but I think the time frame is generally March is what we're aiming for. I guess I haven't been checking the county webpage. I know David created a space where things can be posted. I don't know if all these draft chapters are going on there or not. But I think there's going to be ample opportunity to comment on the whole thing in March.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I've got a timeline somewhere, their proposed timeline that, I could shoot off an email, let you know too.
And are those being posted? Not that I'm looking for additional things to look at, but are those draft chapters posted?
I don't think they are. We really haven't been directed to do that by the consulting firm. I think they want to kind of do all this because they're all a work in progress. There's not really anything that's static, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But they will be as soon as they're done. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gertsch. Thumbs up. Can you give me a thumbs up on the screen? Oh, got it. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I think you have to ask if there's any public comment yet.
Oh yeah.
Is there any public comment? Non-agenda related items. Let's see. I see Maura Henning, Matt Ayers, Keith Kennedy, Jennifer Curran, Bonnie Bath, Ann McKinnon, Burton Hinckley, David Gertz, Sean Moore. Not seeing any. I'll close it to public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Hi,
All right, everybody take care.
Thank y'all.
See you next month.
Thanks.
stay
Thanks,
warm.
Sean.